Well, it's a super exciting project that we were part of. It was sponsored by this group called the X Prize, and their goal is to incentivize fields where otherwise there weren't sufficient finances to drive things. So they feel like they're responsible for the current space exploration that's occurring in the private sector because they sponsored an X Prize 30 years ago that drove that market. So their goal with this X Prize was to drive the same kind of development and innovation in the area of biodiversity. So their rules were that they would give us a few months ahead of time a random location in some rainforest on the planet, give us 1 day to sample with only drones and other kinds of remote sensing technologies. No human was allowed to go into this square kilometer, and then 48 hours to analyze the data and provide a report about the biodiversity that we encountered in that time.
What did you find in your findings? What was the I can't think of a more biodiverse area maybe than a rainforest.
Well, we went to perhaps the most biodiverse place on Earth. So this was a habitat in the Amazon rainforest. And so we had a square kilometer just outside of Manaus in Brazil. And so we deployed our drones and these devices that sat on top of the rainforest canopy, and they collected insects and sound and environmental DNA. And we were able to take like 27 million samples of genetic information from the forest, identified more species of birds than exist in all of North America in this one 1 kilometer area, and then measure hundreds of thousands of insects all in this 24-hour period. It's really unprecedented.
So, okay, so you take this, you analyze it, you have a tremendous amount of research, then what?
Then what? Well, that's I think the big problem that X Prize is trying to identify, which is first develop the technology so that we can do this kind of analysis, and then the next steps, the part that we're in now, is to try and develop and address the market for biodiversity monitoring, not only in rainforests and critically important habitats like the Amazon basin, but across the planet.
So what are the next technological frontiers for monitoring?
So we've now developed and tested and proven these technologies. So our goal now is to translate these things into businesses. So our team alone has generated 6 or 7 new businesses that are each focusing on components of this biodiversity monitoring that are entering the market at this moment. And the other teams that we competed with, some of their teams are also generating these new companies that do things like monitoring environmental DNA at a particular location. So if you're building a power plant somewhere along an endangered forest, you want to know what your impacts are. You measure the environmental DNA to know what species were there before and what your impact is on species later.
It's great that we're having this on Earth Day. Do you know it's Earth Day?
I know. It's Earth Day today.
Which is really cool, but I was kind of joking, not joking, with some of my producers being like, do we still care about that? As in, like, was this research much more relevant in certain areas 2 years ago than you could make an argument that is now?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, in one sense, Earth Day is the greatest disappointment ever, right? In that, and also kind of a weird thing to say. Every day we live on Earth, as far as I can tell, mm-hmm. And so what kind of action can we generate here? So obviously, the most important thing is to align market interests along with saving and preserving biodiversity. And lots of companies rely on services provided by nature. And so those companies have already recognized that and already are engaged in saving the habitats on which they rely on. A great example is L'Oreal. This is a company that has a global mission for making sure that the impacts of the products they generate are going to be neutral over the entire lifespan of the product, from production to use and then the discarding of the waste afterwards.
Do you sense changing winds out there in terms of funding, in terms of support for biodiversity and just environment in general?
Well, I mean, it's complicated, of course, with changing political winds, but we all live on this planet, and that's not changing. And I think anyone of our age, and I don't mean to say anything about how old any of us are, but it's inescapable that during your lifetime you have observed changes in climate and in biodiversity that occurs. And so whether we like it or not, this is something that we're going to have to deal with. The question, I think, from a business perspective, of course, is what's the time horizon of that? Is it 1 year, 10 years, 100 years? And that's a complicated thing that I am not equipped to answer.